I gotta hit him with an update. I been getting to it when I'm up late. Hit it when you at the front gate. They act like they know. Hold up. Guess I gotta hit him with the update. Really with it, I ain't got a pump fake. Killer flow and hit him with the one take. Please tell me what's to them boys. I know they ain't talking about me. Hold up.
Every year, we seemingly celebrate iPhone Day, and while the iPhone has been around for over a decade, we still seem to get excited about it, even if it doesn't ever really change. And well, I think that's probably a sticking point for this review. While the iPhone itself doesn't really change, it certainly does continue to keep us talking about it. This year, of course, they removed the Lightning port. A bold move, considering Apple really wanted to believe that Lightning was the future for its iPhone lineup, but thanks to the rest of the world, no, really, thank you. We now get our very first iPhone with USB-C. This is a good thing, and it plays well into how I view this year's model. It's nothing but a camera, but let me explain. Every year, the iPhone undergoes some minor refinement on a formula that, quite frankly, just works. And while many will cry that iPhones never innovate or change or improve, I think you have to look at it with a different lens. No pun intended. I think Marquez from MKBHD said it best that the iPhone is like a Porsche 911. Each model year brings refinements to a formula that has simply worked and, as a result, has built a cult following. So why change it? It's iconic, and you can see lasting impressions from the originals in the most up-to-date models paying homage to the things that made it what it is. It has identity, it knows exactly what it is, and it embraces that. So yeah, the iPhone 15 is still an iPhone, and next to the last two generations, you'd be hard-pressed to even tell the difference. This keeps the experience consistent, and that's a good thing when you have a product that will ultimately last for decades. And when you start looking at it that way, it all starts to make a lot of sense. I'll be the first to tell you that you don't need to get the new iPhone every year. Heck, I recently made a video talking about whether you should upgrade to this one, which you should probably watch after this video, because while I might be an Apple user, I don't necessarily think it's for everyone, iconic or not. Okay, so then why review a phone that is practically the same? Well, two parts actually. One, to review it from the standpoint of a content producer and camera nerd, and the other to review it from the standpoint of someone who just loves tech and, quite frankly, is an Apple fan. That doesn't mean I won't be fair, but there is something to be said about genuinely liking something enough that it keeps you coming back. So let's start there. The iPhone 15 Pro slots above the standard 15 and 15 Plus and offers the usual Pro bumps. You get a new A17 Bionic processor that may or may not show major performance increases in day-to-day use. At least I didn't notice any major changes. But if you're into mobile gaming, you should see a marketable improvement in both normal games and games with ray tracing. Not particularly something I care about, but it is a bump, and it is nice to see Apple giving a shit about gaming again. Side note, Metal API, which is like Apple's back-end software, has now been made available to game developers, so not only is Apple paying attention to mobile gaming, but gaming as a whole. Gaming on M-series processors will be an interesting thing to witness, so make sure to get subscribed if you want to see what a future gaming Mac might look like. Kind of weird to think about, right? Anyway, so yeah, new processor, whatever. What about the display? Anything new there? Nope. It's nearly identical to last year. Yes, the bezels are a little smaller, but they're still there. And to be honest, depending on what case you're using, I'm using a Nomad Tough case, it actually makes it harder to touch certain elements on the edges, like the playhead for music or for videos, specifically on Twitter. For whatever reason, the timeline, it goes all the way to the edge of the display, which is sometimes annoying. The display also has the same ProMotion 120Hz refresh rate, which sadly did not make its way to the standard 15s, which I know some of you are pretty upset about, and yeah, I can agree with that. All right, so the display is the same. What about the speakers, the buttons, the materials? Well, as far as the speakers go, they're still the same Apple speakers you're used to, which are honestly the best speakers on a smartphone in my opinion for what it's worth. As far as buttons, the 15 Pro gets one new addition. The action button. If you're familiar with the Apple Watch Ultra, you'll recognize this little guy as being a little programmable button for all your fidgeting needs. Need to write out a risky text and notes before you send it? Action button. Need to send that S-tier meme post on X before someone else does? Action button. Need to play your theme song when you walk into the room? Action button. Or are you lame and just set it to silence your phone? Because yeah, the silent switch is gone. An arguably iconic and quite frankly unique design quirk is now gone. So Apple. But at least you can press F to pay respects by holding down the action button. Okay, I admit that last one was a bit of a stretch. But enough about buttons. Let's talk about materials. This year, the iPhone Pro is made from titanium. But who cares? What's so special about titanium anyway? Well, titanium is strong. Stronger than aluminum, which is what most cell phones are made from today. Titanium is also lighter than stainless steel. This means the 15 Pro is actually noticeably lighter than the 14 Pro. No, seriously. However, titanium is a little more complicated to work with, like paint, for example. Titanium cannot simply be painted. Well, I mean, you can, but it won't last very long. Now, I will say that titanium, like other metals, can come in many forms and different grades. If you're interested in that sort of thing, I recommend checking out Rig Everything's video, if you haven't already seen it posted all over the internet. Yeah, the guy who bent his iPhone 15 Pro Max in half. And while applying any intentional braking force to your phone likely increases the chances of it breaking, it is still interesting that the iPhone 15 Pro Max, while made of titanium, seemingly managed to break so easy. But rest assured, unless you like to intentionally break your phones, you'll be fine. There are many speculations as to why it broke, but as a general consumer, you shouldn't be worried. Don't let the internet convince you that these phones are weak. Keep in mind, it's a phone, not a chopping block. As far as battery life is concerned, I think it lasts about as long as the 14 Pro. Of course, if you use always-on display like I do, you can expect it to be a bit lower, but generally speaking, I can get through a whole day with light to moderate use without any issues. Now, if you play games, constantly watch movies or videos, or film externally, you're gonna drain your battery pretty fast, but I think that kind of goes without saying at this point, right? That being said, you won't be horribly disappointed with the battery life, but I do wish it was a tad bit longer. However, now that portable batteries are so commonplace nowadays and USB-C, I doubt you'll ever be far from a power source anyway, so no worries there. If you're looking for a recommendation on a great MagSafe battery, I highly recommend the Anker MagGo batteries. They come in several styles, and I almost always have one with me, just in case. TLDR, the new iPhones more or less operates the same as last year's and even the year prior. Unless you're coming from an 11 or a 12 or maybe an Android phone, you probably won't notice a difference in most of these areas. Okay, technical stuff out of the way. What you will notice is that the iPhone 15 Pro feels amazing in the hands. Compared to the stainless steel on last year's phone, you will definitely notice a difference. It's still a fingerprint magnet, so don't expect it to be any cleaner, but with the new rounded edges on the frame, the iPhone 15 Pro, in my opinion, feels like the nicest, most comfortable iPhone I've ever used, despite the Max being pretty big for most people. It also reminds me of the iPhone 6s with those rounded edges, and it's definitely a nice transition from the flat, sharp edges we're used to seeing. It's funny, because when people were saying it felt lighter, I truly didn't believe them, until I got mine, and immediately was like, whoa, it's actually much lighter. And now whenever I hold a 14 Pro or a 13 Pro, I wonder why we never complained about it more. Small refinements that can make a huge difference on ergonomics. So for me, the iPhone 15 Pro, as I mentioned in the intro, is really just a camera feature upgrade. Sure, there's some light quality of life improvements to the hardware and materials, but the big selling point is the camera features and USB-C. Before we dive into this, it's important to note that the iPhone 15 Pro has the same cameras as the 14 Pro. The Pro Max, however, has the new 5X camera, which is the model I have here. So keep that in mind. Now, while the 14 Pro and 15 Pro have similar cameras, besides the new 5X, the real magic is the software and the accessibility that comes with USB-C. I touched on this in a previous video, which you can find somewhere around here, but the thing that makes the iPhone 15 Pro so much better for video is the fact that you can now record externally to an SSD or an SD card, a first for iPhone. This gives you the ability to now record much longer clips in ProRes and even 60p ProRes in Apple's own log profile. Now, you've been able to film in ProRes on the iPhone since the 13 Pro, but you had to have at least the 256GB model and were pretty limited on how much you could record, making it more of a proof of concept at the time rather than an actual usable feature. Now with external recording and log, you could actually use your iPhone as an additional camera in your workflow and you hardly notice the difference. That's a big deal if you're trying to quickly grab high quality footage for a video or even a client project, but don't have the ability to set up or use a larger rig. This is also good for creators who want the best possible quality but don't want to own or maintain a larger camera setup. Now, I can't say it'll replace my FX3 or even my S5 Mark IIX, but in a pinch, I know I can still get quality footage, especially if I'm in a situation where I may not be able to bring my normal setup. Speaking from my production experience, the 15 Pro's footage is more than usable. I still don't recommend it for large client projects as your main rig, but instead more of a backup. While you can certainly buy a cage and rig your iPhone like a cinema camera, you're still at the disadvantage of sensor size and lens selection. Sure, there are iPhone lenses out there that quite frankly aren't too bad in my opinion, But if you're gonna go that route, you might as well just get a true mirrorless camera. The iPhone is still a phone after all, and I think it still operates as a phone before it does a camera. However, it is still exciting to see smartphone cameras and software get this good. In any case, it opens up the possibility for anyone with this phone to make some seriously good-looking footage. But no matter what, it still comes down to how you use it. So don't think for a second that using this phone will suddenly make your footage better. It just provides more options, which is good. So to wrap things up, the iPhone 15 Pro is just another iPhone. If you're not a content creator or a photographer, you probably won't care or notice any of the differences from your 14 Pro. If you're on an 11 or a 12, however, it could be a pretty nice upgrade. But like every year, the question of whether or not the new iPhone is a good phone really comes down to your philosophy on what makes a good phone. To me, the 15 Pro is of course a good phone. It has all the DNA from the previous iPhones that made those previous models as good as they are. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the 15 Pro is yet another refinement on a formula that was already really good. Call it safe, but Apple knows what works. It may not be new or flashy or fold in half, but what it do, it does well, and each small new addition that gets added seemingly adds to the overall experience that Apple is trying to curate with the iPhone Pro. Years back, we laughed at the name Pro because it never really felt professional, but now I think we can all agree that this year's iPhone certainly earns the Pro name, and I only expect it to be more refined as the years go on. But what do you think? Is the iPhone just a copy-paste year over year? Is it all marketing nonsense? Or do you agree that Apple is slowly refining a well-curated experience on a device we spend a lot of our time on? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button. And as always, make sure to subscribe to see more content like this. I usually upload once a week here on YouTube, but you should also follow me over on X as I post there daily about upcoming videos, cool new things happening in tech, and more. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok to catch some of my shorter videos. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Why must you run around? Run around like batshit crazy. I'm trying to film, I'm trying to do this. The teleprompter don't want to prompt today. The whole time I'm filming this, my phone is buzzing. Ain't nobody want to talk to me all day. And now suddenly, getting slammed. Unbelievable. Y'all pick the worst time to reach out to me. You have all the time in the world. You could call me all day, any day, and I'll pick up and be like, yo, what's up? But y'all want to call me right now. Granted, it is almost 10 o'clock, and I guess that's usually when people are winding down. But I'm working at 10 o'clock. I'm done. iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's the same phone as last year. You could just do more camera stuff. That's really that's all that matters. Who cares about anything else? Video games.